Hello and welcome to another Things That Spark Joy episode. So I recently revisited something I'd done on the channel years ago, which was a no hand, no land deck. And in the course of that video, I mentioned this book, which is the official strategy guide released by Wizards of the Coast in, so look at just get the thing on the date here. I think this would be 90, is this 97? Yeah, 97. And then a year later, they released the advanced one. And what happened was, there was a comment in the No Hand, No Land Revisited video about what books do I own related to Magic the Gathering, like older books. And in the reply, what I did was I redirected them to an unpacking video I did of a book from Wizards of the Coast about, I think it was Tempest. But in that video, I go through a number of other books, including these. But what then happened was I went through back through these books, and specifically this one, and thought I should revisit this because definitely flicking through these books sparks a lot of joy. So I'll start off with this one, but this video is mainly going to be concerned with the contents of the second book, the advanced guide. So the significance of the first one in terms of videos on the channel is this was the book where I got the idea for the No Hand, No Land deck. So I'm going to just flick to the back of the book here, because I have been through this book once before. And where it came from is at the end of the book, or towards the end of the book, the author of this book, which is Beth Morrisound, who was a columnist for the Duelist. There's actually a really good other book where she goes through all sorts of classic Magic the Gathering archetypes and how they changed over a number of years. But this one focuses on some key ones and explores them through the lens of 5th edition, which is pretty interesting to see that being done with a core set. So the different categories are the Weenie deck, the Big Creature deck, the Burn deck, the Permission deck, and then finally the Land Destruction Discard deck. Now at the time, the reason why I picked that is because I wasn't seeing, to me, like land disruption, card discard, hand disruption, those sort of things seemed to be something from a sort of bygone era. And so that, that was the choice of that set of videos around the template toolkit for No Hand, No Land, because I thought it would just be interesting to explore that. But it did fascinate me how it would all been done around the contents of just one, albeit very large, core set, because 5th edition is a pretty large core set. So I flick through this, and then I thought, well, I'd take a look at this again. So this is really what the video about. So a year later, they published this. And this is actually written by Mark Justice. I'm assuming Tim Dedopulos, I think that is. Probably contributed some of the editing here. Mark Justice, if you're not familiar with the name, was a Magic Pro of that particular era. And where this book is interesting is that it goes through various, I suppose I'm trying to think of the best word for this, various aspects of the game, but very much through the eye of a Magic the Gathering professional. And so it starts off with a summary of certain archetypes, certain decks from up to this period. So we've got Henry Stern's 1995 National Finalist deck, National Championship deck, Pro Tour Dallas Necro deck, Pro Blue, Justin Gary's 1997 US National Champion deck, including sideboards as well. 5 Colours deck, Necropotence deck, Randy Buehler. So it looks back historically, and there's some sort of explanation about the environment of that time and what particular rules about mulliganing applied. And then it goes into the current decks as of the release of this book. So we've got Sly, and there's a nice sort of evolution at the time. Necropotence, White Weenie, Blue-White Control. So the book starts off with a really nice environmental summary of the game, both historically and at the time the book was released, which is way back 1998. And then it goes into actual deck construction. So it again talks about certain, so it has these sort of key elements of deck construction, and for some of them it actually reflects on specific decks, archetypes, those sort of things. So I really like this because there's always a constant reference to the metagame going on. And there's these all handy where they sort of re-summarise everything. And then there's a sort of practical application for a specific deck. And then there's a fascinating section on evaluating cards. So it goes through a process for doing that. So the idea is you look at what's currently available, and so it sort of goes through, and this is relevant to standard at the time. That's the sort of the card pool choice. So first thing, just looks at what's out there already. And the idea is that this was done in preparation for a new set coming out. That's the idea. Then this thing of considering what's the actual environment like, and then going on to evaluating cards from the new set. So as this book was being written, Stronghold was coming out. So the author takes you through a step-by-step process of evaluating a new set for tournament play. So literally goes through every single card. And if you've seen the unpacking that I mentioned earlier I think it was for Tempest, that book does a similar sort of thing where it goes through each of the cards and talks about them and where they might be strong and what various other things. So this is a version of that, albeit much more condensed than in the other book, but for this particular set that was coming out at the time. So it's pretty cool to read through that process for Stronghold. For each of the colours. And as you can imagine, that's quite a long section in the book. And then, as it's done previously, it reiterates the particular process that's been described. And then it covers things like sealed deck strategy. And again, it's using specific examples. So it sort of walks you through various aspects of sealed deck strategy. And then a little bit about the draft tournament environment at the time. it actually mentions a couple of different ways of drafting. So there's booster draft, but floating around in the draft ecosystem at that point in time was something called Rochester drafting as well. So it's interesting to see those compared and the process of going through the draft picks. A bit about deck building. And then a final bit about just general metagame stuff and tournament play and various ethical considerations as well. And then at the back, I sometimes forget this is here, there's an interesting set of probability graphs for mana curves to do with, like the chances of drawing certain number of cards in a deck by which turn. And then a whole list of popular tournament decks split up by type. So you've got type 2, and there's some extended. That was a thing back then as well. So really just type 2 and extended. There's no legacy stuff here or vintage. And so the other reason I bring this up, because off the back of seeing that no hand, no land come up again, it was really cool to see the discussion in the comments section and how many people enjoyed that series and seemed keen for me to do something similar again. And it is something I'm thinking about doing, and it probably will happen. It's probably more likely to happen once I run through with the current run of set musing, so maybe in a couple of months' time, although I might shoot a test video and publish that just to get a feel for it, because obviously the way I deliver it will be slightly different in that I'm not planning on going out and buying a ton of additional cards like I did for the original No Hand No Land series, so it'll be done slightly differently. But I was just trying to think through different starting points for the template toolkit. I could use this again, but I didn't really want to do that because the only one that I really enjoyed in here was the No Hand No Land. The other thing that did cross my mind, and this is actually an idea, nothing to do with No Hand No Land, that I'd had for quite a while about revisiting very old decks, is to start off as the template for the toolkit, one of these older decks, and effectively, look at how certain aspects of a deck have changed over time, or cards in that particular type of card has modified, like I did No Hand No Land within a deck. That's one possibility, to pick an older deck from the meta. The other thing that I did think, and maybe I'll end up doing a mixture of both, is to revisit some theme decks I really like and just possibly select one that I have. It's probably easier, and do like half and half, do half on camera, half on Scryfall, and go through a particular theme deck from an era and say, well, okay, if I wanted to turn this theme deck into some toolkit for eternal play, for eternal format, like what sort of cards do similar things that have been released since then. So yeah, so I am thinking about that for those that are curious, that have been reminiscing the halcyon days of the No Hand No Land series. It's definitely something I'm thinking about. But I thought for this episode of Things That Spark Joy, it would be interesting to talk about something that sparked joy, particularly this week, off the back of it being mentioned about books that I own, and then revisiting this brought a smile on my face. And so yeah, I'll include a link to the unpacking of the Tempest book, and when I went through both these books and a number of other ones alongside, and I think I spoke about the various pros and cons of the books. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.